She's a seasoned compere and social impact advocate. She began her career in media as a co-host on the Pan-African talk show Moment, and later led The Juice, an acclaimed interview series on Danny TV. Bolanle is the host and executive producer of The Scoop with Bolanle, a news commentary show offering sharp insights on social and political issues for a digital audience. Today, Bolanle serves on the boards of transformative leadership and sustainable development initiatives focused on youth, governance, and development. Bolanle's global community impact continues to make her a powerful voice. Astute and amazing audience, please put your hands together as I welcome Bolanle Olukanni as she comes on stage. Keep clapping. She could change her mind and just go back. Keep clapping.
Okay, Bobcats, make some noise. Thank you so much for having me. This is such a pleasure to be here, and it truly is an honor. This is a generous invitation. I have a bit of jet lag. I was in Lagos on Wednesday, and then I went to LA, and then I'm back here, so it's been a whirlwind. And every time I come to New York, I hear I bring the rain, so I'm actually very, very sorry. This moment is really meaningful to me. Years ago, I was actually accepted into the Masters in Public Administration at NYU, and I was going to study and do an MPA here. Any MPA students? We got a little clap there. No?
Oh, no, I was clapping for you.
Oh, okay, you're clapping for me. Okay. And, you know, this was post-NYC, which is a program that you have to do in Nigeria upon graduating. And I told myself, I said, you know what? I really want to change Nigeria. I want to do something great for the country. And I had a dual degree in communications and international studies. And I was like, well, let me go ahead and come back to New York and study public administration. Well, I did not do that. I chose to deviate and do a different path. And I remember reading my acceptance letter and asking myself, is this what I needed? Is this what I want? But I decided that instead I would do a career in media. And life is really interesting. I was nudged into a completely different direction, one that I didn't fully anticipate, and I took the leap into the unknown, and the unknown is working in media. I work in storytelling. I am a storyteller, and I have to say that there is a lot of power in storytelling. The creative industry, when I first started my career, was just picking up. I'm going to age myself. Social media wasn't really a thing, you guys. People were still like, you're a TV host, are you sure? But we see that things have completely begun to transform and change. And what was curiosity quickly has become a calling for me. I spent the last 12 years in Nigeria's creative sector, and it truly has been an amazing journey. I'm Nigerian, and I live in Nigeria. And today I'm going to be speaking to you guys on some interesting themes that I've noticed and the power of our creative sector and what it can do for the continent of Africa. And I hope that as I go into my address, you begin to think in different ways when it comes to what we can do for the change that we're hoping for our continents. When I first started hosting Moments, it was very, very different. Moments with Womo was a talk show that was on Ebony Live TV put together by the formidable Mo Abudu. And I remember the very first season of Moments with Mo. We had 12 episodes that we had to shoot in 2 to 3 days because that's how we shot. And of course, as a TV host, you have to look good, right? You gotta look the part. And our stylist, she kept saying, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Now, mind you, this is about 12 years ago. It's hard for me to find clothes that I can put you guys in. A lot of the clothes that we were wearing were H&M, Zara, Mango. They were not African brands. And we told her that she really needed to challenge herself because if we were gonna be Africans speaking about Africa on an African platform, we needed to be wearing African designers. The amazing thing is, by season 2 of the show, 50% of our clothes were African designers, and by season 3, all of our clothes were by African designers. So the momentum for the creative sector was already moving very, very fast. And I'm pleased to say that this dress that I'm wearing it is by a Nigerian designer. So it is possible, right? It's possible for our creative sector to create change. But it wasn't just about fashion. It was really about a cultural reawakening that we were seeing happening those 12 years ago. Across Africa, we are witnessing the rise of our creative economy. And I don't think it's anything of a whisper. I think it's actually a roar that we're beginning to observe happen. I'm gonna give you guys some facts and some numbers, so bear with me. But I think these numbers are very important to understand what we're seeing happening across the continent. In Nigeria, Nollywood produces about 2,500 films annually, and they're contributing $7 billion to the economy. Our dear Afrobeats, which was once only confined to, our continent, there's no country that you're gonna go to that you're not gonna hear it. I've been to multiple places across the world, and even in places like St. Tropez and Ibiza, at some point you're going to hear an Afrobeat artist being played. These African artists are touring global stages, they're selling out stadiums across the world, and it's not a coincidence. But the thing to observe is that this is cultural currency. In South Africa, the creative industry contributes a lot of money to their GDP. Right now, they're contributing 1.7% to the GDP. Cape Town has an amazing fashion scene. Johannesburg has an amazing arts district. Durban has one of the best festivals in the whole world. I've been multiple times. Any South Africans out here? Okay, any lovers of Amapiano? Exactly. Our dear Ghana, the year of the return. Ghana has done an amazing thing when it comes to marketing the continent of Africa to the whole world. The festivals turned into a movement, they turned into a cultural moment, and they turned into a moment and opportunity of identity for many Americans. And they've packaged something that I have to say, Dirty December originally belonged to Nigeria. But I give Ghana the kudos for doing the work that we in Nigeria are yet to do. When you go over to Francophone-speaking countries like Senegal, there's been a long revered artistry, and they have some of the best art exhibitions that are really, really competing on a global stage. I don't think this is isolated. So what's happening in Nigeria is happening across the continent. And I know that, sometimes when people think of Africa, they think of Nigeria, but the whole continent as a whole, we have to move together when it comes to creativity. Now, the thing with creativity is a lot of times we just think it's about beauty. We think it's about entertainment. We think it's about looking good. We think it's a niche sector. But I dare say that creativity is not about beauty or entertainment. Creativity is power. It's about defining who we are on our own terms. And it is really important that we tell the world how we want to look. So I want us to take a backdrop and go into other countries that have been able to do this. People who have mastered the art of using creativity as a tool for power. Let us start with America, the beautiful country in which we are in. America is a master of branding. They, through movies, music, television, and even social media, they sold the world a dream. Who here thought America was paved with gold when you were in Africa? When I was growing up, we were told that America was the place to be. It was the place that you had to go to fulfill your dreams. And it wasn't just about the geography of America. America sold you an identity. The white picket fence, the cheerleader, the quarterback. It was the American dream. When I did my senior year of high school in America, and I was living in Kenya, and you could not tell me that when I moved to America, I wasn't going to be prom queen. That I wasn't going to hit the cool guy, bump into him, he'd look into my eyes, he's the quarterback, and I would be his prom date. Well, it didn't happen. But it wasn't about whether it was going to happen or not. It was the fact that America had convinced me, a young, naive, 16-year-old girl, all the way in Nigeria, that this was what was possible. Now, the thing with America's PR is that it's not only policy-driven, it is also culturally curated. When you think about popular TV shows like Friends, there are massive movie stars like Tom Cruise, global musical artists like Mariah Carey, Michael Jackson, Beyonce. Every single one of these individuals have been used to position America as the leader of the world. America has built an image, a pipeline that reinforces its specific ideals through repetition and through reach. So if you're in Lagos, Accra, Nairobi, it doesn't matter. Growing up, there's not one single person in this room who, if you did not live in America, you didn't hear about America. You heard about America's language, you heard about its fashion, and of course, this was heavily done through storytelling. Hollywood alone generates over $100 billion annually. They're supporting 2.6 million jobs, and the interesting part about Hollywood is that since the 1940s, American governments, administrations, they have partnered directly or indirectly with Hollywood. I'll give you an example. Top Gun, who here, because of age, let me just ask, who knows Top Gun? All right. It's a classic film. Top Gun was actually made with the corporation of the US Navy. Captain America, this has been branded as a symbol of national pride. They aren't just entertainment, but I dare say it's propaganda. Now I want you guys to take off the nuances of the word propaganda. Propaganda is essentially what says whether good or bad. It is pushing an agenda. And they do it with so much finesse. When you think about political shows like Homeland, The West Wing, they have been very good at shaping perceptions of Americans' governance and also telling us who the enemies of the world are. I want you to go back to summer 2013. Again, I know some of you were quite young, but this was an interesting summer, and it was when I began to peek into what it is that America does with the power of art and storytelling. One summer, 2 films came out. Olympus Has Fallen and White House Down. Has anyone seen those films? Good. They were released just months apart. Now, the interesting thing about both those films is that both of them were centered around the White House being attacked. Both of them featured American heroism triumphing against what? All odds. And both of them enforced the notion that America will be the last line to defend the global world freedom. In both films, the villains, of course, were foreigners. One was North Korea, and the other one was a Middle Eastern group. And what's interesting about that specific season in 2013, in actual reality what was happening in the world, was that North Korea had been ramping up threats that they were going to bomb America on a nuclear scale. In addition to that, the Arab Spring was going on, and there was a lot of uncertainty happening when it came to the Middle East. America was really grappling with what was its role on a global stage when it came to protecting democracy and freedom. And those films were used as a cinematic affirmation of national strength and, of course, moral clarity. This is not a coincidence. This is calculated cultural influence that has been used. People like to say creativity and the creative sector is soft power, but I dare say that it is not soft power. I believe that the creative sector is hard power disguised in beauty. And we need to wield it accordingly. When we think about Africans, we are creative. We are creative in how we're able to figure out how to make sure that we can get things done, even with the little opportunities and access to resources that we have on our continent. Culture has the ability to build coalitions. And when you think about America, America's greatest exports truly is not technology or democracy. It's the idea of America itself. It's done an amazing job in swaying perception, and it's also helped America actually continue to excuse why they have military presence all around the world. Why? Because America has added enough entertainment value to most of our lives for many decades, and in exchange, we have allowed America to continue to position itself as a global world leader. Let's look at some other countries who've also been able to utilize their creative economy to push themselves and to brand their country as a leader. South Korea. South Korea has an amazing, strong industry under the K-pop genre and K-dramas. I hear K-dramas are great if you want to feel like love is real. We also have India. India has done a phenomenal job in using its film and specific music as a powerful tool for national identity. Bollywood, after Hollywood, is one of the largest film industries in the world. They produce over 1,500 films annually, even though the person is leaping from here to there, and you can't explain why, it doesn't matter. Their films are believable. They have a reach over 90 countries, and in their films, they're not just watched, they're felt, and they're done specifically in their own way, in their own genre, and in their own language, but yet the world consumes them. From all the emotion-driven storytelling to the drama, we see how India has used their films to push their music, their culture, their art, and of course their food. Another country that's used their creativity to really push their branding is France. When we think of France, we think of French films, we think of love, we think of sophistication, and we think of art. All of this is an investment, and it is an investment that has come from the government. Food, fashion, it is possible. So I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, why not us? Why not Africa? We're already shaping the way we tell our stories globally with everything we do, specifically with our music. But we need to step into this future with confidence, with strategy, and with focus. So let's talk a little bit about the barriers in our way, because we have to be candid, and I truly want us to have a conversation that's honest. Governance. We're all understanding that we are very creative, we're brilliant, but I'm going to give you guys some key details, because as someone who's living on the continent and has worked in the industry for now close to 12 years, we do have a lot of obstacles that we have to face, and those obstacles, they truly, truly, truly are preventing us from being where we are supposed to be when it comes to our whole continents. We're finding ourselves limited by leadership. We have struggles with leadership because our leaders have not fully seen the potential of our creative sector. There's inconsistent policy, there's corruption, there's weak infrastructure, there's bureaucracy, and it's holding back our continents. In many African countries, as has been mentioned before, and Janet had asked a great question, we can see that there's no budget for the creative sector, or it's non-existent. In some ways, the creative economy sometimes is still not even recognized as any part of the economy. And it's now only in countries like Nigeria where my tax collector is always knocking at my door. Based on what I post, that's what they say my taxes are. If I enter G-Wagon, my taxes are high. If I don't enter G-Wagon, my taxes are lower. But it's good to see that they understand that the sector actually exists. It's not only limited to Nigeria though. Kenyans have also spoken about how there's a restrictive experience in the type of content that's being uploaded, and they are actually censored. We see in countries like Nigeria sometimes the censorship board will say you cannot depict the police in a certain way, you cannot depict, SARS, NSARS in a certain way. So we see that there's restriction when it comes to our creativity and our access to it. Another example would be in a country like Nigeria, where I'll give you an example. Who here knows Lekki Ikoyi Bridge? Okay, Lekki Ikoyi Bridge is the star of every film. And for example, you're on Lekki Ikoyi Bridge and you're a content creator and you want to shoot something and you want to just take a normal video. Just like how you're in New York here, you just want to go to the Brooklyn Bridge and just shoot a video. For example, in a country like Nigeria, if you're on Lekki Ikoyi Bridge and you are seen with a camera and there's some sort of law enforcement agent around, they will come and they can seize your camera. Experiences like that stifle the creative industry. We've seen popular YouTube creators who've said that they've actually left Nigeria because they've not had the ability to be able to create content the way they want to, in freedom and also in expression. But despite this, despite all of this, Nigerians, Africans are still moving forward. But there are challenges, and there's also obstacles that are standing in front of us. We have obstacles like piracy, and piracy is a concept where a lot of people on the African continent still don't understand why they have to pay for content. You'll see a movie uploaded on YouTube 2 days after it's been put in the cinema, and people will, share a video via PDF or share a video via different platforms because they still don't understand why they should have to pay for content. So things like this are truly barriers to our creative industry moving to where it's supposed to be. Then let's go down to the actual infrastructure. Right now, in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, we have one of the slowest average broadband speeds. We're doing 3.9 megabytes per second whereas the world is doing 11 megabytes per second. We have power cuts. If you're trying to choose a video, you'll be hoping that the generator sound is not inside your video. And if it is, it's vibes and inshallah, whatever. But there's lack of reliable transportation, there's poor urban planning, there's so much challenges and obstacles. A lot of these have nothing to do with myself or you as a creative. It has to do with the fact that we need better governance, right? Because governance is about systems, and those systems need to work. And those systems work, I can do my work better. Governance plays a defining role when it comes to the promise of a global Africa that we have. And I asked myself, can our governments actually begin to think about what they can do to support the creative sector? Nigeria recently launched, and we do have a Ministry of Creative Economy, which is very exciting, and we're happy to see that that's happening. But can there be tax incentives? We think about cities like Los Angeles, which I spend quite a lot of my time in. They have massive tax incentives for people who come there to shoot. We think of Atlanta, they have the same. Even a city like Toronto, they have the same. There are better legal systems that also support people's intellectual property. So for example, if I create a film and I see that you've pirated it, I can quickly go to court. The court can put a specific punishment for the fact that you have done this thing, and there's going to be a solution to it. We have to think about our creative economy in partnership with our government and also with our legal structures. When governance is weak, things are useless. Let's just call it what it is. A designer will be struggling to send a dress as gorgeous as mine across and overseas because they don't have access to proper systems and structures. A designer is also struggling to be able to find fabric, to be able to create beautiful designs. And let's not talk about the naira to dollar, as we all know. There's a lot of weakness when it comes to our creative sector, and this is based on the fact that our government and our industries are not supporting us the way they can. Creativity thrives in freedom. It thrives with infrastructure. It thrives with leadership that can see arts not as luxury, but as a pillar of national strength. And we need more structure. This brings me to our education system. Who went to secondary school, high school, and on the continent, Africa? Okay, great. So a lot of us have experience in the difference between the education system here and the education system on the continent. What is one thing that you would say the African education system teaches you how to do? Cram. Memorize. Cram and memorize. That is the reason why we do so well in STEM, because STEM is truly about memorizing and cramming formulas. But I dare say that this is actually impeding us and preventing us from moving forward. Our education system right now on the continent rewards compliance. It does not reward creativity. And we need to begin to think about education systems that push forward ethics, values, design, communication, and the access to digital literacy. Because if we don't invest in creative learning, what's going to happen is as the world continues to advance with people being big thinkers and thinking outside of the box, we as Africans are going to continue to think in a loop and only think in what we've been taught and how to think. Then finally, we do need to address Japa culture. You guys are my Japa. And that's okay, because you have the right to look for better opportunities for yourself, you have the right to think about your future, and you have the right to want a better thing for yourself. Now, the problem with what's happening on the continent is that, and it's stark and it's quite scary. Just in Nigeria alone, this is a figure that made me leave my mouth agape, and I can tell you it's doubled. In 2021, when they asked the average youth, 50% of them said they wanted to leave the continent. So if two of you are standing together, one out of the two of you said, it's enough, I want to leave the continent. And this was in 2021. Right now, I can tell you that it's probably 75%. And I don't blame them, because at the end of the day, you have to be in a position and your life has to matter. And if you feel like your continent has not shown you that your life matters, why would you remain there? So to those of you who are in the diaspora, you guys are part of the solution. We don't only need your remittances, which of course is helping support. We like the black tax, so send it. I like to advocate for that because things are expensive and things are hard on the continent. But we need your mentorship. We need your investment. We need your advocacy. You have access to a specifically different opportunities that the average African does not have. You are one in one in one, and I don't want you guys to take it for granted. But even if you plan on never returning home, which is fine, return with your ideas, return with your influences. Help us build bridges from here to there, to share ideas and also to fund the creative sector, because that is what the creative sector needs. We need money. We need Black-owned platforms. At the end of the day, what we're really battling right now when it comes to branding and the role of Africa on a global scale is about perception. Perception is power. When we think about countries like India, India has chosen specifically and strategically to separate itself from the perception that America and the rest of the West wanted to give it. They are no longer trading their economy based on the dollar, and their economy has done very well. In addition to that, they are now part of BRICS, and they've completely separated themselves and said, we will not play games based on what the Western world tells us to do and how we should do it. In addition to that, we need to make sure that we know exactly what it is that we believe. We need to know how we want the world to see us. Are we here or there? We need to have structure, strategy, and focus. Now, the great thing about it is we can reshape the way the world wants to see us very simply through social media. Social media, I think, is one of the best things that has been invented in the last 20 years. I know a lot of people hate it, but I have to say that it gives us access to opportunity and transformation. It's flattened hierarchies, it's democratized access, it's given every single one of us a voice, and it's also allowed us to be able to completely change stereotypes and see into different worlds. When you think about it before, if you wanted to create any type of content, film, this, you had to have massive, massive budgets. And you also had to have an access and platform to distribute it. The great thing is platforms like YouTube allows you to do that. Social media completely blurred all the lines, all the gatekeeping, all the things that Hollywood said, you can't do this, you can't do that. Social media has become a leveler. The great thing about social media also is it offers accountability. It has caused us to be able to offer accountability to the way the Western media has portrayed us and the role and the narrative in which they contributed to saying that Africa was an impoverished black hole. It's also become the ultimate bridge between creators and consumers, between continents, cultures, and also the ability that Africa can really reshape the way the world wants to be thought of. So we have to wield this power intentionally. Right now, we're wielding it quite individualistically, which is fine because that's what we need to do. But we need to come together as a collective and ask ourselves, how are we going to wield the power of the creative? How are we going to wield the power of social media to reshape how the world sees us? There's a great dilemma that's being faced right now. There's a tension between the image of what the West saw and what the West portrayed. For some of you here who might still be a little younger, but if anybody remembers, what was the image of Africa? It was that child with a distended stomach who had kwashiorkor, and there was a fly buzzing on his face. That was what the West told the world was Africa. For many of us who moved here, when we came to school for the first time, I will never forget, they asked, wow, you guys wear clothes? And I remember, and this was like in 2011, or this was like 2008, 2009. And I remember thinking to myself, how is it possible that someone can ask me that? Well, I don't blame them, because that's what the West told them, that we were all stark naked and we were starving. Now, this is the problem, though. It was a single story, like Chimamanda Adichie likes to say. And yes, there are truths to the stories. We're not going to deny the fact that Africa is significantly and severely impoverished, but it wasn't a whole truth. And this narrative is incomplete, and we are finally in a place where we can completely begin to change the narrative, which we're already doing. We're doing it with our art, but I want you guys to understand that art is power, culture is power. And when power is used very well, it not just changes yourself, it also changes the economy and the future. For years, American culture told us this is how they lived, this is how they thought. When most of us moved here, we realized this is not how it was. But by then, it was already too late. We were already in America, and we were already convinced of the American dream, which to some extent is true. So African culture, we have the ability to do the same. We have the ability to completely transform and create a new story. And we can shape what tourists expect through, for example, 30 December. Who is going to Lagos in December? Raise your hand. You were convinced by this last 30 December, right? You're there. Just come with your dollar, because things are expensive. And it's very important that we also let our children know that things are possible. We want them to be able to believe that they can actually stay in Africa and they don't have to move. You know, the other day I was thinking about how my sister came to see me and she lives in Canada, and she was in Lagos. And I was just thinking, what a shame. I can't go to my sister's house just by next week or the other week because she's on the other side of the world. And the average person in another country doesn't experience that distance. But we as Africans are constantly living in a cycle of distance from our family, our friends, our loved ones. Why? Because our continent still has a lot of work to do, and most of us are in pursuit of better dreams. We have to, at some point, change that. So here's my call to action. To our policymakers, they definitely need to fund the arts. We need opportunities for protection of our intellectual property. We need there to be more creative hubs that are built. And we need our education system to begin to teach our children differently, to be able to think outside of the box. To the diaspora, to you guys. As much as you're here, as much as you're pursuing your dreams, you're pursuing your hopes, it's so important that you think about what's happening in the continent. The continent cannot develop without you guys. Why? Because you guys are the educated populace that's being exported out. So what we're left with right now on the continent is a large amount of people, and a lot of them are uneducated. An educated populace is a dangerous populace. Why? Because it means that they're easily swayed and influenced by anything. And also poverty is a weapon that leaders, politicians, and also the elite use for their own benefits. So we as a people have to advocate and hold our leaders accountable to ensure that they do not do that. The work that we're doing matters, the work that you're doing in every single one of your sectors matters, and as you're here, please continue to think about Africa. You guys are architects of the new Africa. It's us, it's not the government, it's us. We are the ones that will hold them accountable and make sure that they do what it is that they need to do. I don't think Africa of it as a place, I think of it as a presence, I think of it as an opportunity and an experience. And we need to build it powerfully. To speak about branding, and when we think about something, we need to think outside of the box in the way we position things that are African owned. Who here knows what this is? It's a sponge. I grew up all my life using this sponge, bathing with it, and to me it represented, that's that Nigerian sponge. To my dear TikTokers and the buyers of this product, it's an African exfoliating sponge that's sustainable and it really just does the work. What are we saying? Sponge that is 100 naira, she's selling it for $20. That's power, and that's the power of branding. So I want you guys not to think about things in Africa as mundane or there's no opportunity. If someone can rebrand that concon, like we like to call it, as an African exfoliating sponge, there's absolutely nothing that cannot be rebranded. And I dare say that Africa has to be rebranded. Thank you.
And I'm sure everyone here has learned a thing or two. One of the things you spoke about that really stood out to me is the power of social media. And I'm sure we all can testify that in recent times, social media has been a very, very strong tool for activism. People have taken to social media to report things that the world probably would never know about if you don't speak out. We see things that are often seen as abominations and things that are often covert coming to the limelight because of social media. And I remember in 2020, 2021, this is actually one of the questions I've really been itching to ask you. EndSARS was a very tough time in Nigeria for people who know about what happened then. And Bolanle was a very loud voice in the middle of all the chaos. I'm sure it came with a lot of backlash from the government. How were you able to grind through that time? I don't know if you're okay with speaking about it, and what's your advice for people who want to speak out but they feel like they're going to be silenced by the government and things that are happening around?
So, I've always been very outspoken about things that I don't like and policies and, the lack of accountability that our government has. And I think, fortunately for EndSARS, truthfully, everyone was finally galvanized to be able to stand up and speak about it. And it really is a shame that it didn't create the change that we wanted it to. It's probably one of the things that absolutely breaks my heart, because I think it broke the spirit of the young Nigerian in a way that we cannot go back to. which is also the reason why you saw that in 2021 there was a massive increase in people wanting to leave the country. And I think people thought to themselves, if we did all this and we did all this and nothing changed, then what next? And I think a part of me, to be honest, and I'm going to be very frank with you guys, I think a part of me felt that as well, where you begin to ask yourself, like, what's the point? And I think that's the reason why, you know, I realized that there has to be a different strategy when it comes to Nigeria and to Africa as a whole. I mean, Kenya was able to utilize protest and to at least allow that to create some shift and change. So it does work in some countries, and of course the Arab Spring. I mean, in Tunisia, no, it's not, was it Tunisia where the guy set himself on fire? Yeah. It was Tunisia, right? Yeah. And that was the beginning of the Arab Spring. But, you know, in a country like Nigeria, Nigerians have realized that there's no point in dying for the country because things go move after you, you know. And I say that because at the end of the day, NSAS people died and Nigeria is in a place where things are really, really tough right now. Now, does that mean that we should be silenced? No, but I have realized that to create impact, you have to do a different strategy. I think Jimmy Tawa said it earlier that money is currency, specifically in Nigeria. Money is power in Nigeria. And, you know, you'll find that you have to be a bit more, Nigerians, you have to be a bit more coy about how you speak out and how you speak up. And this is where creative sector really comes into play and using film to push things. I've also realized that in Nigeria, to get things done, you need to be friends with the politicians. Sounds crazy, but you have to be. Because there's a respect culture there, and there's a, I'm gonna use the word agidi. You guys know what agidi means? Agidi is like, ugh. The English term would be like, oh, you really wanna try me? That's how Nigerian politicians are, like, you think you know. So I realized that you have to befriend them to essentially find a way to get them to listen to you. You want their ear, you know, and as you get older, when I was young, I was very feisty, you know, so if I see injustice somewhere, I'm like, rah! And I've learned that, you know, there are different strategies. You have to use diplomacy to get what it is that you want, which is why I think that the creative sector and art is a form of diplomacy, and it's a tool for diplomacy to really hold our leaders accountable.
That's super true. I have just one more question for you before we take questions from the audience. If you have any question, I think we could take 2 questions. Please just line up on this queue. There's supposed to be a mic with a boom stand, so just line up there. So my second question is, in building a personal brand with purpose, how do you stay grounded, especially when you're constantly in the spotlight or managing multiple roles? Because I know you have a lot going on beyond. You have your business, of course you have your social media things going on, philanthropy and all of that. So how do you manage everything?
So I think for me, the main thing is purpose. Like my life, I'm very big on legacy. I think, you know, Chizi said it earlier that I think of, life is short, but life is long but it's short, and I'm very aware of that. And one of the most important things I ask myself, when I'm gone, what do I want people to say about me? How do I want people to summarize the life that I lived? So that's my biggest thing, is legacy. I think about everything I do, the work I do, the art I create, you know, the content I'm focused on, everything has to be moving towards a specific purpose and a plan. And it really helps me stay grounded. Of course, there's some times where like, I fluff around and of course like, hey, I'm gonna go to Ibiza, I have fun. But what I'm saying is that essentially, you know, there's a theme in my life, and the theme in my life is that I wanna make sure that I use my platform to advocate for people and to advocate for a better society. I went to Loyola University, and it's a social justice school. Is that a fire alarm? As per... Is that fire alarm?
I'm not sure, but I think someone would quickly check. Okay. Oh,
It's
she
okay.
says no.
Are we okay?
You're right.
All right, cool. Just want to look out for all of us. So I went to a Jesuit university, and you know, the theme is go forth and set the world on fire. And you go to school, you live a life for others. So that's something that's really important to me. In addition, of course, to making money, because money is, like I said, power, and power allows you to be able to do better work and good work for society.
Thank you so much. So we need a mic for... Okay, so please start by introducing yourself, your name, and what school you're attending, your course, whatever. Keep it very brief, 30 seconds per question.
Thank you so much for speaking. I loved it, every moment of it. But my name is Angela Jai, and I go to NYU Med School. My question was, how did you handle like training here for a period of time and then going back to Nigeria to live? And I understand it was a different time. I mean, from when I was in college to now, it just looks like, is it the same night? Each time I go every year is just different. But I guess like, how did you face the fears of like, oh my God, what if I go back? I tried going back, didn't work. I came back to the United States. But how did you face the fear of like, what if I don't get a job? Or like, what if, I know like, if we're being honest, there's usually a lot more potential there's a lot more you can get out of life in the US. So like, how did you like plan that in your head and like face the fear of like, oh my God, I'm losing so much opportunity to go back to my home country?
You know, that's a great question. I am like a big risk taker, and I just courage. I think that the great thing about like being really young is that you can take risk and you can try things. And you know, your question is, you want to try something, and if it doesn't work out, you can leave. Do you get? Like, you try it, and if it doesn't work out, you can leave. And I think that opportunity can be created anywhere. When I went back, I did my NYSC. And I remember, again, like I said, I applied for NYU grad school and I got in. And I was like, do I go to grad school or do I stay in Nigeria and pursue some sort of career in the arts and creative sector? And that's what I did. And it panned out well for me, you know, but it could have not panned out well. And if it didn't, I would have left. I will say that I think you have to be very strategic and you have to have a very specific plan. You're in pre-med.
No, I'm in med school.
You're in med school, right? You know, I'm going to be frank with you. In 2022, or one of these years recently, Nigeria lost 60,000 doctors and nurses in 1 year. There's a reason why, because the medical system and the medical structure there is not the best. You know, so you have to look at your industry. Does it make sense for you to go back for your industry? If it doesn't, don't go back. Build up yourself, build up your money, then you can go back. You know, so please don't ever feel pressure, like I said, to say, oh, people are going back. It's really about what is happening in your industry and what can you create. Do you have a plan? Do you have a system? Most likely, a lot of times when you want to go back to Nigeria for something like that, you have to have your own medical practice, you know. But with all of that said, fear should never be a reason why you don't do something. Last, if it's not working out, you can always leave.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Janet, right? Yes, I remember because I love the fit.
Can we have someone adjust the mic for her?
Oh,
Or you can just remove it, yeah.
I wanted to ask, how did you figure out branding for yourself? Did you research on yourself, or did you have to pay for someone to give you advice? Because I'm still trying to figure that outside of money for me. And the second question is, what did you use as your support?
So, I'm a huge advocate in investing in myself financially. Like, I believe that if you have the money and you find the experts, pay them. If you don't do that, the onus is on you to go on YouTube, and that's a school where you can get access to free knowledge and free information, and you can figure out how you're going to do the work. But an expert is always the best. But the thing about branding is branding should be true to who you are, right? Like at the very fundamental, it should be, who are you? What is important to you? What is your value system? And that should inform what your brand identity is. So before you go and meet an expert, the work that an expert will do is they'll help bring that out of you, but you need to do the introductory work to that. So if you have the funds, find an expert, invest in them. If you don't have the financial capacity, YouTube is your best friend. You'll be able to find access to free resources. But before you do that, you have to ask yourself, who are you? Like, what matters? What are your value systems? What makes you tick? What is it that you care about? You think about your friends. Your friends will be a great reflection of what your value system is. Because the type of friends that you have and what they like also informs who you are. And a lot of times people say, oh, I don't like my friends, I don't like my friends. Okay, find new friends. It means that your value systems don't align. So before you begin to think about branding, I always say that start at your value system. What's important to you? What is it that makes you stay up at night? What is it that you can talk about for days and days and days? What are your yeses, what are your nos? And then you can build up your brand identity from there. And what? So, oh, my family, bro. My family is they're my cookie. Like my sister actually is a marketing exec and she's really good at marketing. So my sister was actually one of the first people that really helped me with terms of like branding and identity when she had my time. Now she doesn't have my time. But my family was really my support. They were just like the cornerstone in how I was able to navigate a lot of my industry, the entertainment industry, which can be very chaotic and you can get sucked in if you're not careful. So yeah, you gotta have a really good support system around you, and you have to be a support system to people as well. You're welcome.
Okay, we can take one more question, not longer than 30 seconds.
Sure, thank you. I actually have two questions.
She said one. Where are you from? Where are you from?
I'm from Nigeria.
You don't listen. She said one. Eh?
Okay, I'll speak to.
She's going to be around.
Okay.
What's your name?
Uchechi.
Uchechi, she said one.
Okay, that's fine. I picked something you said, especially about the students, like kids, and this is actually something I've been thinking about since I started grad school. My name is Uchechi Peters. I'm doing my MS in project management at the School of Professional Studies, and I've been thinking about this, but you just kind of articulated it in your speech about like teaching kids to think outside the box, because I feel like that's where creativity starts. So my question is for the kids back home. How can we help? What can be done to help them to think outside the box and not to go the route of just cramming and just, yeah.
So I think, truthfully, again, like I said, that's going to be a massive partnership between the government and, us. In the fact that the education system in Nigeria, not only does it need to help people think outside of the box, but in Africa, we need to use the education system to teach ethics. Like, at the very core of the day, I think that a large percentage of like our generation and even people who are 18 and above, I kind of think that what they are and how they are is what it is. I think for Africa's future, we need to focus on people who are 5 to 16 because you still have the ability to shape their mindsets. And for example, there's a project that I'm working on where we're going to be teaching ethics and values in schools. And this is going to be like one of the big things, but it also just having the experience of, they need to meet people who are just different. Just when you think about, what's that big brother, big sister? Those little things help, like if the system doesn't help teach outside of the box, their experiences with individuals will help them think outside of the box. I mean, and a perfect example would be Tunde, who's here, who does chess in songs. And like has done a phenomenal, like just that itself, like the fact that a child is seeing a chessboard and their brain is able to analyze and think in a different way, that in itself allows them to be able to say, oh wow, this is possible. This is something that's different. This is different from my school curriculum. Extracurricular activities, which are quite non-existent for most Nigerians. But even when I was growing up, they were, but I feel like it's dwindled. So I think it's gonna be us as individuals being mentors to these young people, creating programs, supporting programs, funding programs. A lot of these schools will allow you to do programs in their school. As long as you give headmaster Coke on Sunday or whatever, they will allow you to come. They're like, sure, you can come. That's really where we're gonna be able to see a lot of change when it comes to our education system, because it's gonna take a lot of time to change the actual system. It's going to be the extracurricular activities that helps the kids think outside of the box.
That's super important. I did a project over the summer last year. It was actually for a primary school in Nigeria where they didn't have access to good infrastructure for learning. And what was actually super important about it was they were very welcoming because they also want to see the change. And I feel like people are also stuck in that circle of wanting to collect something for themselves, while others are actually looking for and praying for someone to rescue them, which was, in my case, that was what happened. So they had been praying for someone to come because they had reached out to the government several times and there was no help anywhere. And, I was able to get a grant from NYU, which NYU students here know the Bolanle Family Chainmaker funding, which gave me $10,000, and that money went a long way. When I say a long way, went a really long way in renovating the school. Like, we literally broke down the block of buildings for primary school children and renovated it. So I think, speaking to what you said, it's super important for us to look at how we can gather resources from here and push them back to the continent, because it goes a longer way there.
And just to leverage on that partnership, you don't have to create it from scratch. Find people who are already doing it. If you're sending $100, $20, $50, how much is $100 in, let's use Nigeria now? Huh?
160K.
160K. Ah. You guys, as I'm here, me, my Uber. Ah. I'm just joking. But at the end of the day, like $100 is 160K. That's a lot of money. So you don't have to start it. You don't have to do it yourself. Find partnerships. But I promise you guys, our education system and those people who are 5 to 16, they are the ones we want to target right now. Because if we can get them to see life in a different way than what most of us were raised with, I think we can really create some change.
Thank you so much. So this brings us to the end of this segment on the power of a personal brand and the future of African leadership. I hope you've learned a thing or two, and thank you so much.